Hello there, Sev here from Motorhome Dealer Group, and welcome to this video guide on the Westfalia Control Panel that you see here in front of me. In this video guide I'm going to show you how to operate this control panel and utilise its various functions, and also how to interpret the information it presents to us. And so at the end of the video, hopefully you'll feel comfortable using this control panel in your leisure vehicle. We're not going to be covering any troubleshooting or problem solving in this video, so if you are having an issue with your control panel or vehicle, please consult your instruction manuals or the help of a technical professional. This is really just a quick start video guide to get you up and running using this control panel in your leisure vehicle. So let's get started. So let's start by explaining the control panel layout before then going through the various functions and what the different buttons do. So as you can see on the left here, we have a LCD screen, and this is where information is going to be presented to us. And then over here we have a series of buttons. Now this can look quite confusing at first, and the operation isn't immediately obvious, but it's actually quite simple to use once you get into it. So let's start with the LCD screen, and as you can see here on the left we have two symbols for the fresh and waste water tanks, and they will indicate the levels of water in those two tanks. So fresh tank is at the top and your waste or grey water tank is at the bottom. Now in the middle here where you see this number 22 degrees C, this is where numbers can appear. This can be times when we're dealing with the clock or with timers. It can be for the temperature, as you can see here, but also battery voltage will appear in this area as well. To the side here you can see a plug symbol. This shows that this vehicle is plugged into mains electricity and the onboard battery charger is working. And over to this side we will have some symbols appear here if we're running the refrigerator or the onboard auxiliary heater, and those symbols are the same as the symbols on the buttons just here as well. Underneath, when we're running on battery power alone, you will also see a segmented display to indicate the approximate capacity. And there are also some other little symbols that can appear if we're dealing with timers, but we'll cover that in a little while. So let me show you how the panel appears when we are on battery power alone. So when on the auxiliary or leisure battery power alone, essentially off grid, you can see the mains hookup or the plug symbol here has disappeared, so that's no longer visible, and we do have a battery symbol shown just there. And the segmented display I mentioned previously is now shown here, showing the first and last positions, and as you gradually lose battery capacity, this segment will move down to indicate your reduction in battery capacity overall. So I think the best thing to do to explain the buttons is to sort of go through them one at a time, showing their various functions. But we do have a couple of buttons that are going to be used together. There's sort of buttons that you hold down while pressing other buttons. The most common ones you'll press in conjunction with something else are going to be the up and down arrows, which are of course used to adjust settings essentially. We also have an on-off button and a clock button, and these are going to have various sort of functions depending on if we're using those buttons in combination with others. This sounds complicated, but trust me, as you'll see, it's not actually too bad at all. So firstly we have this button here. This is to give us temperatures. So if I tap the button, it's going to show us the internal temperature, as you can see there. Now that's being displayed on the screen. If I press and hold though, for the duration I keep the button held, you can see the external temperature. Okay, so that's nice and easy. So internal and external temperatures. We then have the battery voltage. So if I press this button, this panel will now display the battery voltage. Again, pretty straightforward. Now, we then have the clock symbol. If I press the clock symbol, it's going to actually show us timers, not the clock. And the timers are used to provide start times for your auxiliary heater. So you can program predetermined times for the heater to turn on, essentially. And the more times I press this, you can see we cycle timer number 1, timer number 2, and timer number 3, and at the moment all of these timers are set to midnight, so they're not active. And if I press again, we're back to what was previously displayed, which was of course the battery voltage. Underneath we have the heater, and if I press and hold the heater button, all this is going to do is show us the selected thermostat setting that the auxiliary or diesel heater is turned to. So at the minute I've got a temperature dialed in of 27 degrees, okay, but it's not turning the heater on. That's a different process which we'll see shortly. Same for the refrigerator icon here. This shows us the target temperature that we've set our refrigerator to. Okay, so then at this moment that was 5 degrees. And then we have the up and down buttons. These will, like I say, adjust settings or numbers up and down. So let's now start going through some of those functions that we can do. So let's start by showing you how to set the time on this panel. Certainly useful if you're going to be using timers for the auxiliary heater. So to set the time, what you're going to do is simultaneously press and hold the clock button and the heater button. So like so, and you can now see the time is now displayed there. So 12:41 currently. Now if I want to adjust that time, I would hold those two buttons whilst holding the up and down, or up or down arrows, sorry, on the side. So I would press these two buttons together, and now if I hold the up button, you can see that's going to adjust the minutes. I can single press, of course, and if I press and hold, it's going to start by cycling the minutes, and then it starts to accelerate, jumping through 20-minute steps. And that's how you set timers on this particular unit. Okay, so it does require a bit of holding down if you need to make big time adjustments on either the clock or any of the timers, like so. So that's how you show the clock and also how you set, by pressing and holding the heater, and then if you need to adjust, you can also use the up and down arrows accordingly. So for the timed function, I will actually show you that shortly, but let's show you how to turn the heater on immediately first of all. We do that by pressing and holding the on-off button and the heater button together, like so. You can now see the heater symbol has appeared here in the top right, and now the heater will go through its startup process. If I want to turn the heater off, same thing, I just press and hold the two buttons together. Easy as that. Now adjusting the heater temperature is done by pressing and holding the heater button and then using the up or down arrows accordingly whilst holding down that heater button. So we can do that either beforehand, which I'm doing now. Obviously the heater isn't running, but I'm adjusting that temperature, or we can do it when the heater is running. To operate the heater using a timer, we first need to make sure that we've set the correct time, which I showed you how to do earlier. Then we can set up to 3 times that we would like the heater to turn on. And we choose those by pressing the clock button. You can see timer 1 here, timer 2 here, timer 3 here, which are all set to midnight at the moment. Now, when you want to actually set a time, you need to hold the clock button down, but there's a bit of a quirk. For example, if I wanted to set timer 1 now, I've got it selected, but if I now press and hold, it's selected timer 2. So what you need to do is, where you would normally single press to get to the timer that you would like to change, instead hold it down. So for example, I know that while on the main screen, a single press of this button will select or display timer 1. Instead, I'm going to hold it. Timer 1 is now shown, but I still have the button pressed, and whilst that button's pressed down, I can use the arrow buttons here to modify that time accordingly, up or down. And we set a time very much in the same way that we did by setting the actual clock itself. So I'm going to set 1 AM. There we go, in timer 1. Now, for example, if I wanted to set timer 2 now, I wouldn't single press because that would just display it. I need to press and hold. It cycles to timer 2 and holds down. Okay. For example, if I wanted to go from the main screen to timer 3 to set it, I would go to timer 2, and then the next press is going to select timer 3. That's the one I need to hold. Now timer 3 is selected and I still have the button held, and I could set that time, for example. So that has set, or that is how you set the times. At the moment we've just set a time in number 1 of 1 AM. Now if I actually want to enable that time, so the heater does indeed turn on at that time, I need to turn that timer on. And we do that by first selecting the timer you wish to turn on, and pressing and holding the power button and giving the clock button a tap. And that has now placed a clock symbol next to that timer, as you can see. So timer 1 is enabled. If I select timer 2, that is not enabled at the moment, but let's, for example, set timer 3 here. So I'm going to press and hold and tap the clock button. Timer 3 has now been enabled. And on the main screen, you can see that that has shown there now. We have the clock symbol to show that timed heating is turned on and timers 1 and 3 are engaged or enabled. That's it, it's as simple as that. And when those times elapse, the heater will turn on. Now, when the heater turns on in this manner, it is going to run for a default of 120 minutes or 2 hours. But that can actually be changed. Now, you can only make a change to the running time of the heater when it's turned on using a timer when the heater has actually turned on in that way. So you can't preemptively choose the duration the heater is going to run for when it kicks in via a timer. You have to wait for it to actually turn on from a timer, and then you can modify it. You can check the running time when the heater is turned on from a timer by pressing the down button, and you can modify by holding the down button as well, and that will reduce the running time of the heater once, like I say, once it has turned on via a timer. So again, another little quirk of this panel, you can only modify the running time of a heater that is being turned on via a timed program once it has indeed turned on in that way. But that's how you would set the times, how you would enable the timers and modify the running time once the heater is turned on. Now, to cancel timed heating, all you need to do is select the timer you wish to disable. So here's number 1, for example. Press and hold the power button, touch the clock symbol again, and now the clock has disappeared from that timer. I can then go to 3, which we also had enabled. I can press and hold, touch the clock button, the clock symbol has now disappeared, and you can see on the main screen that the timed heating function has been disabled. So whilst we still have times stored in the timers, they're not enabled, so the heater will not turn on, obviously unless we directly run it there. So there we go, that's how to operate the heating. Both obviously earlier on showed you how to directly turn it on, but also how to use the timed program function should you so wish. So now let's move on, showing you how to operate the refrigerator. Next we have the refrigerator, and we can turn that on by press and hold the power button and touch the fridge symbol. And now you can see the refrigerator is now on right there. Very simple, and as mentioned before, obviously we can see the temperature by pressing and holding the refrigerator button, and if we want to modify it we can use the up or down buttons like so. And to turn the refrigerator off, press and hold the power button, touch the fridge symbol again, and that has now turned off. As you can see, the symbol has disappeared. So there we go, that's how to use the Westfalia control panel. Like I say, it doesn't look easy, and there are some odd button presses you need to make, but once you know what you're doing, it's actually a relatively easy control panel to use and provides a lot of functionality. But hopefully you found this video guide useful. I'm Sev, and thank you very much for watching.